Hey, deserving listeners, it's time to continue watching 90 Day Fiancé. Let's do this thing.
I'm so excited, baby. I know this is going to be real tough.
Finally, we're gonna make it, huh?
We're going to make it happen, baby.
I don't want to lose him. And that's what matters for me the most. So I say yes.
All right. So from the beginning, I've been, worried and increasingly worried about their dynamic. That for her, she has a hard time asserting herself, and he has a tendency to bulldoze. And so in this moment, she's essentially saying, I don't really want to go to Serbia. I'm terrified of what will happen. I'm willing to wait for a more secure option. But I am sure that he is going to punish me with negativity or rejection or something if I don't do this. And so I'm going to do it because I don't want to lose him. That is not a good dynamic. There's nothing wrong with her saying, well, I'm worried about it, but I've weighed all the options myself. I know he really wants me to go. And you know what? I've decided that I'm willing to take that risk because I want to get married, sooner than later. That's a different statement. That's not what she's saying. What she's saying is, I don't want to do it, or at least she's not saying she wants to do it. And I'm only doing it because I don't want to lose him. Ugh. So not a good beginning to a relationship. Now, maybe when they're in the same town, they'll develop a more healthy dynamic. Maybe this is just a stressful time for the two of them. Maybe it doesn't necessarily mean anything for the future, but it could mean bad things for the future for the two of them. And it could mean bad things for her in Serbia.
Really, I'm going crazy for love. Obviously, I am willing to do anything for Andrew.
I think you've come up with a good decision there, baby.
Okay, so what I would say to Amira is, okay, you're willing to do anything for Andrew, you'll do anything for love. And you're saying you will go to Serbia and you'll take that risk for love. Let me throw out a different thing that you can, another thing you can you're afraid of Serbia, but you're afraid of, what might happen. You're afraid the same thing will happen in Mexico. And you're willing to overcome that fear to benefit him. That's great. Well, there are a lot of other things that I think you're afraid of that you're not considering as an option of what you could overcome. I think another fear you have is to be honest with people. Another fear you have is to tell people what you want, because I think you might be afraid of them rejecting you. Is that true? That's another fear that you could overcome for love with him. You could say, I love you so much that I'm not going to do what I've done in previous relationships, and I'm going to tell you no. But I'm also going to tell you I love you and I want to be with you. And I need you to stop pressuring me so much because I want to be. Normally, I don't say things like this because I'm too afraid of rejection. But I love you so much, I'm not going to do that again. So there's another thing that she could be working on in the name of love.
I'm going to book it right away. I know it's going to be.
Hopefully, I can see you after 14 days. This time it works. Wish me luck.
You're so brave.
Now, what they didn't show, and maybe it didn't happen, is any kind of conversation about their last conversation, in which he basically said, look, you either go to Serbia or we're done, which is a pretty unreasonable ultimatum to give someone under the circumstances. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. Did they have a conversation about that, or did they just act like it never happened? I'm going to take a guess and say they just acted like it never happened, so that's pretty concerning as well. And if they did that, there's also a chance that they've had many conversations along these lines where he bulldozes and she gives in because she's afraid of losing him. So if that's true, that's a pretty concerning dynamic that the two of them have.
I am giving up my family. I am giving up my friends, giving up a part of myself. It is not something you can do lightly.
Yeah, you just really feel for all the people in this position where they have to give up everything, their culture, their family, their friends, their town, everything, to move halfway across the planet for a relationship. And the other person doesn't have to give that up. So that makes me feel really bad for Amira and everyone on the show who has to do that. It's a huge loss, and I hope that it's worth it for these people. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes the people don't really know what they're getting into until they find out later that, oh, wow, this is a lot worse than I thought it was going to be. But then you just have to wonder, does Amira have enough connection with who she is on the inside that she can navigate this very difficult decision? Or is the prospect of Andrew's disapproval eclipsing her ability to evaluate whether or not this is what she really wants? I don't know. They haven't really gone into this couple very much, and we haven't really heard from Amira. I wish the producers would ask more questions. Whenever they ask questions, I'm always really appreciative of that. You know, they ask very pointed questions, like with Mike and Natalie last season, the producer says, "Do you love Mike?" I thought that was a pretty good question. I think that Mike misinterpreted the answer, but I thought it was a pretty worthy question, and I wish the producers would ask, or maybe include the asking of the questions of, do you really love him? Is this really worth it? Do you really want to go to Serbia? Those are questions that I'd really want to know from her. Do you really feel like he truly unconditionally loves you? Or are there strings attached somehow to this? Do you have traumas about rejection and disapproval from others? I don't think the producers are going to ask those questions, but those are questions that I would ask because I would want to know, is she doing these things from a trauma place or from her heart? I don't know. Let's watch.
To know that I'm going to be by myself for 14 days in Belgrade is really scary. I am not sure it's the right decision. I have no idea what I'm doing right now. But I am fully devoted to Andrew, and I will put all my energy so that it can work.
Okay, so a little bit more information from her. I love him so much, and so I'm going to do anything to make it work. I guess that would make sense. If you love someone that much, then you want to do what you can do to preserve that relationship. But the way that they talk, the way he treats her, the way that she talks to him, it doesn't look like the kind of love that we would cheer for anyway on this show.
Because Andrew is not aware that I am making those huge sacrifices for him. Like, if something happens to me, who I'm gonna turn to? And I have just disappointed my whole family and friends. I gave up on my studies.
I don't know, but there seems to be a commonality with other people that we see on this show where they're really desperate to get to the country. They're really desperate to make the trip. And then as they're making the trip, or as soon as they arrive, then it starts to hit them in terms of what they're really giving up. And am I doing this for right-headed reasons? Is it worth it? And I think that's normal. I think that now that I think about it, it's a common psychological phenomenon for us. I think buyer's remorse has something to do with this, if I remember right. Anyway, point is that when we want something or we believe we want something, that's all we can really focus on. An example, maybe a common example, would be that you're thinking about buying some new gadget that you really want, like a new phone, for example. And you're like, oh, I really need that new phone. And look at the videos. It looks so awesome, the da-da-da and the da-da-da. And then that's all you can think about. And you're like, yeah, it's totally worth it, $1,500 or however much phones cost these days. And you buy it and you get it. And then you're like, oh, it's so fancy and new. And you start doing all your things. Then you realize, oh, it's just a phone. It's not really any better. I guess it's kind of better, but is it really worth $1,500 what I just spent? It's normal to have that feeling. And then maybe a week later, you're like, yeah, it's worth it in the big picture of things. I would have needed a new, whatever the decision. Usually, that's how it goes. So is that what she's going through? Or is she suddenly hit with the reality and now she's really checking in with herself? Is this really what I want? Maybe we'll find out the answer to that question. All right, well, that does it for that episode of Psychology in Seattle. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.